Breaking. The clock is ticking. What we warned about in our last report was not speculation, it's unfolding right now. Prime Minister Keir Starmer has been officially cornered. This is no longer a political chess match, it's an ultimatum. Senior Westminster insiders have confirmed Starmer has just 3 days, exactly 72 hours, to make a decision that could determine not only his leadership but the fate of the British government itself. The ultimatum is simple and ruthless. Back down immediately, withdraw the royal reform proposals, or face a no-confidence vote that would end his premiership on the spot. This is unprecedented in modern British politics. A future king, with one defiant gesture, has triggered a constitutional crisis beneath the sitting Prime Minister feet. Reports from inside Downing Street describe chaos and fury. Starmer is said to be livid, shouting at aides, isolated, and slowly realizing the scale of his miscalculation. He believed Prince William would remain silent, but he was catastrophically wrong, and now he's paying the price. The snub at Lancaster House wasn't the finale. It was the opening shot in a war he cannot win. He trapped, and every escape leads to ruin. Either he bows publicly before the monarchy he tried to control or faces political execution from within his own ranks. How did it unravel so fast? Because he picked a fight with a national icon and lost. The ultimatum's origin is even more stunning. It not just from the opposition, not just Rishi Sunak smelling weakness. It's an unholy alliance, the opposition united with senior Labour figures turning against their own leader. MPs once cautious are now in open revolt. They've seen the polls showing 68% of the public backing Prince William. They know continuing this standoff is suicide. Behind closed doors, Labour elders have confronted Starmer, warning him bluntly, "End this now. You're destroying us." Their message came with a harsh offer: issue a public apology to Kensington Palace, pause the royal funding reforms, and they'll protect him. Refuse and they'll join the opposition to bring him down through a no-confidence vote. They made it clear, "We will sacrifice you before we let the entire party sink." It is betrayal at the highest level. Starmer is no longer at war with Prince William, he is fighting for survival against his own political family. And that 72-hour clock isn't a threat, it's a death sentence counting down. A vote of no confidence, 3 words that sound procedural, but in truth, they are the constitutional equivalent of a nuclear strike. It's the ultimate weapon of Parliament, a formal test of whether MPs still trust the sitting government. If Starmer loses, it's not symbolic. It's fatal. He must resign instantly, his cabinet collapses, and his authority vanishes in a single afternoon. That's why this is the perfect trap. The Conservatives alone couldn't topple him, but now, with public fury exploding and Labour tearing itself apart, the numbers have shifted. Labour MPs in vulnerable seats are panicking, flooded with angry messages from voters who adore the royal family and see Starmer as a bully targeting Prince William and Princess Catherine. They don't care about the technicalities of reform. They see arrogance, and they want it punished. Those MPs now face a brutal choice: betray their leader or lose their careers. Rishi Sunak knows this and is capitalizing on it brilliantly. He urging Labour MPs to put country before party, positioning himself as the defender of Britain's traditions while painting Starmer as the reckless radical threatening them. Inside Labour, the atmosphere has turned from anxiety to full-scale revolt. The numbers tell the story: 68% of the public side with William, but worse for Starmer, only 31% of Labour-owned voters still back him. That means nearly 7 in 10 of his own base have abandoned him, or want him to retreat. Loyalty has evaporated overnight. Labour internal chats, once cautious, are now chaos. The moderate wing, desperate to hold centrist seats, is raging that Starmer has handed the next election to the Conservatives on a silver platter. One senior MP, speaking anonymously, summed up the fury: "We spent 14 years rebuilding our image, 14 years proving we weren't extremists, and he destroying it in a week. And in just 72 hours, he has set fire to everything he built." Starmer picked a fight with the most trusted man in Britain, second only to his wife, and now he watching his legacy crumble. The fury isn't just coming from Labour moderates. Even the hard left, the Republican wing that has never hidden its dislike for the monarchy, is turning on him. They're livid that Starmer chose this as his battlefield, not the NHS, not wages, not the economy, but a doomed constitutional showdown that dragging the entire party into disaster. He'd done the impossible, united every faction of Labour against him. And the betrayal doesn't stop at the backbenches. The real dagger is being twisted from within his own cabinet. The same people who sat beside him in power are now scrambling for cover. Sources from an emergency cabinet meeting this morning described the scene as brutal. Ministers who once defended him are now openly panicking. Foreign Secretary David Lammy, still fuming after his public humiliation at the Commonwealth event, reportedly exploded, accusing Starmer of wrecking Britain's diplomatic reputation and alienating allies who are now quietly siding with Prince William. But the deepest cut came from his own deputy, Angela Rayner. Known for her sharp instincts, Rayner is said to have told him point-blank, "You've lost, Keir. The public has decided. The only question is how much we can save." It was not advice, it was a warning. And her refusal to publicly defend him was a veiled threat of resignation. Imagine the humiliation, your own deputy declaring, in front of the entire cabinet, that your leadership is finished. Starmer has lost the room, lost his allies, and when a prime minister loses his cabinet, he's no longer leading, he merely occupying space, awaiting execution. Meanwhile, as Westminster burns and Starmer clings to power, what is Prince William doing? Nothing, and that the brilliance of it. His silence is surgical. Since Kensington Palace's thunderous statement about defending the Constitution, William hasn't uttered a single word. He doesn't need to. His calm, disciplined silence has become a weapon, a symbol of strength and control as his opponent unravels. The press hails him as dignified and principled. Veterans have begun gathering outside Buckingham Palace. Commonwealth leaders are calling privately to express support. William's soft power, the same influence Starmer mocked, has hardened into political steel. Starmer brought a knife to a diplomatic gunfight. He thought he was confronting a figurehead. Instead, he facing a future king with global reach, unwavering resolve, and the moral weight of a nation behind him. William doesn't need to issue ultimatums, the country is doing it for him. And his silence, steady and regal, only amplifies Starmer desperation. So, let's break down the trap. The first path in Starmer's 72-hour ultimatum is submission, back down and surrender. He could hold an emergency press conference at Downing Street, step up to the podium beneath the Union Jack, and declare that, after reflection and consultation, the government will pause all royal reform proposals. He could insist it was a misunderstanding, that he holds the deepest respect for the Prince of Wales. It sounds like a way out, doesn't it? But it's not. It's the beginning of a slow political death. The moment he does it, the narrative writes itself, the weakest prime minister in living memory. The opposition would descend like vultures. Rishi Sunak would label him a coward, a leader humiliated by a royal. Headlines would scream Keir the quitter. But the true damage would come from within. The left-wing Republicans, those who already saw him as cautious and compromised, would see this as total betrayal. They'd rage that he'd surrendered to inherited privilege, that he'd proven himself spineless. "We elected you to modernize Britain," they'd say, "not to kneel to the crown." He'd lose their loyalty forever. And with it, his authority. Every figure in Westminster, donors, unions, civil servants, and foreign partners would know the truth: Starmer can be broken. Push him hard enough, and he folds. He'd remain Prime Minister in name, but the power would be gone. A living political ghost. Then comes the second path, defiance. The so-called courageous option. He could decide to fight. He could double down, deliver a fiery speech about democracy and parliamentary sovereignty, declaring that no royal, however beloved, stands above an elected government. He could call his critics cowards and vow to survive the no-confidence vote. It would sound bold, decisive, even heroic. But it would be suicide. The arithmetic is merciless. He does not have the votes. His own MPs, terrified of losing their seats, would abandon him in droves. The opposition, united and disciplined, would move in for the kill. The vote of no confidence would be called, and the result would be swift and brutal. There is no scenario where he walks away victorious. In both options, the ending total annihilation. Starmer would be forced to resign in utter humiliation, remembered forever as the first British Prime Minister destroyed by a war of his own, making a war against Buckingham Palace. His downfall would become a political cautionary tale, the story of a man so consumed by pride he couldn't see the trap closing around him. The Labour Party would implode into civil war, factions tearing each other apart in the scramble for power, while the Conservatives stand by, amused and opportunistic, preparing their triumphant return to government. Starmer's attempt to appear strong would instead trigger the fastest self-destruction in modern politics. This isn't a strategic choice, it's a suicide button. He is cornered, out of moves, and out of allies. We've talked about William. We've talked about Starmer. But there's one more silent force in this game: the king himself. King Charles. Officially, Buckingham Palace remains quiet. The monarch smiles in public, carries out engagements, and avoids any mention of the constitutional inferno consuming his government. But that silence is not neutrality, it's calculation. Palace insiders say the king privately supports his son's stance. Charles, who waited a lifetime for the throne, understands the delicate balance of monarchy and politics better than anyone, but he also understands legacy. And according to those close to him, he sees Starmer's reform agenda as a direct threat to that legacy. For months, he's viewed the proposals as an assault on the principles Queen Elizabeth II spent 70 years preserving: the dignity and independence of the crown. At first, Charles reportedly urged caution. But when William decided to act, the king didn't stop him. Instead, he gave his quiet blessing, assuring his son that the moment demanded strength. That subtle endorsement changes everything. Starmer is not merely confronting a prince, he is now facing the full weight of the monarchy. Any hope that Charles would intervene to rein in William is gone. The king and the Prince of Wales are united, and united against the Prime Minister. Starmer's position has gone from fragile to impossible, and as Labour collapses in chaos, the opposition is celebrating. Rishi Sunak, just days ago seen as politically weakened, suddenly looks reborn. He calm, deliberate, and disciplined, projecting statesmanship, while his rival disintegrates. He isn't attacking Starmer directly. He doesn't need to. He framing the crisis as a matter of duty, stability, and respect for the Constitution. In every press appearance, he casts himself as the adult in the room, while Starmer is painted as the reckless child throwing a tantrum at history. His team doesn't even bother crafting new attack lines, they simply amplify They are flooding social media with ads that simply display poll numbers and replay clips of Labour MPs turning on their own leader. Their strategy is brutally simple: never interrupt your enemy while he's destroying himself. And it working flawlessly. The Conservatives have surged 7 points in just 72 hours, a political earthquake no one saw coming. Donors who had vanished months ago are suddenly back on the phone, promising funds. Starmer isn't just ending his own career. He's breathing life into his defeated rival. In one reckless week, he handed Rishi Sunak a straight, unobstructed path back to Downing Street, all because he couldn't resist challenging Prince William. But step back from the chaos and consider what really happening. Constitutional scholars, normally cautious, measured voices, are now sounding the alarm. Words like terrifying, unprecedented, and potentially fatal are being used to describe the crisis. Professor Robert Hazel, a respected expert we've quoted before, appeared visibly shaken on national television this morning. He warned that Britain has entered completely uncharted constitutional waters. The entire system, he said, depends on an unwritten code, a gentleman agreement of mutual restraint between the palace and Parliament. Starmer shattered that trust with his unilateral reforms, and William, by breaking royal silence, detonated the counter-strike. Both sides have now gone nuclear. For ordinary citizens, this is more than political drama, it's an existential moment. The very foundation of British democracy is quaking. We are watching a medieval power struggle erupt in the modern age. Who truly governs Britain, an elected prime minister or a future king born to rule? For 3 centuries, the answer has relied on balance. Starmer tried to tip that balance, and the system is now cracking under the strain. Financial markets are reacting, the pound has fallen against the dollar, investors are retreating, and global confidence in Britain's stability is evaporating. There is nothing the markets fear more than a constitutional war between the head of government and the heir to the throne. This is no longer politics, but a full-scale crisis of national identity. Starmer hasn't just endangered his premiership, he's endangered the very fabric of the United Kingdom. The clock is ticking. 72 hours remain for him to choose his fate. Will he bow, publicly humiliated before Prince William, or go down fighting in a blaze of political annihilation? There is no third door, no secret truce, no deal that can undo what's been unleashed. The breach is too deep. The prince has drawn his line in the sand, and Starmer, in his pride, has already crossed it. Now comes the reckoning. A man who spent his entire life clawing his way to power has thrown it all away in a single week of arrogance and misjudgment. He underestimated a rival he dismissed as ceremonial and discovered too late that William represents something far larger, the soul of the monarchy itself. When this 72-hour countdown ends, Britain will wake up to a transformed political landscape, either a crippled, broken prime minister clinging to office, or a new government rising from the wreckage. Either way, one victor stands tall: Prince William, the future king who defied his own government and won. The only question that remains is how Keir Starmer will be remembered, as the coward who surrendered or the fool who fought a battle he could never win. Tell us what you think he'll choose and stay tuned, because we'll be following every second of this final countdown. The moment it all collapses, you'll see it here first.